Well, I'll just go with the first thing that came to my mind. The time that I was happiest recently that I remember was meeting up with someone who's actually an ex-boyfriend of mine, and we spent a day together where we went and worked out, and then we went back to his apartment and had breakfast and just like spent all day together, like in bed, and he would be drawing on the floor next to me. We were listening to podcasts, just spending time in the way that we spend time together, which is like one of my favorite things in the world. And that, I would say, is the memory that comes to mind, or the thought that comes to mind when I'm thinking about the time that I was happiest. I feel that love is expanse. It's a flow of energy that's unrestricted when you get out of the way and allow yourself to have whatever experience is currently presenting itself to you. The ability to be free. I feel that when I am operating from a place of love, I am available emotionally. I'm willing to be vulnerable because I'm not trying to protect myself, because there's nothing to protect yourself from. Like, we're all afraid of so many different things because there, in truth, are a lot of things to be afraid of. But I remember my guide, this woman that I work with, she looked at me and she said, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I'm like, I die. She's like, yeah, you die, and then what? And I was like, well, it could be horrible. And she was like, yes, it could be horrible. So the worst thing that could happen is you die horribly, and then what? And because of my spiritual beliefs and feeling like we just sort of are reabsorbed into the universe in a different form, it was this realization of like, oh yeah, well, I guess the worst thing that happens is I die horribly, and then I'm reabsorbed, and maybe I come back, or maybe that's it, but I still exist outside of this body, so I guess there's really not that much to be afraid of. And in that moment, I think I understood love in terms of expanse, that we're all just reabsorbed into this big universal energy source, and I let go. So getting out of the way, recognizing that there's a lot to be afraid of, but still being vulnerable anyway, just opening yourself up to something like this, where I look at you, I have no idea your story, but I can be available and open and vulnerable and share something of my experience. I think I got super off topic there, but that's the basic gist of it, I think. I did a theater program in Chicago at Steppenwolf, and I had the good fortune of working with an individual who created a space for us to do this technique called viewpoints. And again, I guess I can only speak for myself, but I looked forward to that class like every day, because it was a very intensive program, and at the end of the day we would all sort of like file into Guy's class, and he'd look around and he had something planned, and all of us probably looked like we were exhausted and hungry, which most of us were, and he would say, okay, well, maybe let's do something else. And he would let us do this technique called viewpoints, which essentially is kind of what we're talking about, where it's a practice of absorbing into a unified state of consciousness, essentially. there's more to it, and I'm sure someone who created viewpoints would be like, no. But that was my experience with it, was that you connected with the people around you, releasing yourself for the benefit of the group. And he taught it so beautifully, and he was a mover and he was a dancer, so he just created this space where we were able to be. And I remember, like, right now I'm just thinking about this one day that we came in and we were doing the exercises and the blinds were sort of drawn in the room, and the way that the windows were set up, there was just like this one shaft of light on the ground, and I might have been in the exercise or watching it, but I just really remember being aware of that moment in space with all these people, and everyone was so focused and engaged. Egos were dissolved and people were connected. And at the time I was pretty young. I was 19, and I understood it, but now I'm so grateful for it because of all the things that came from it. So when you ask me, being in a space where I felt love and support and connection, love, that would be it. Mm-hmm. Being young, and I'm not that old, but being young is really difficult because I think because a lot of the time you don't have perspective yet. I remember being so unhappy, like especially my junior year of high school, senior year of high school. I remember like sitting on the ground in my room crying, and I can't remember now why, but the thought of getting up made me want to cry, and the thought of staying there made me want to cry. And I was going through a really awful time with my best friend. We had had a falling out and weren't speaking, and it was at that point in my life the most significant relationship that I'd had, and you feel so alone. And there are hormones and things, and when you're 18 you're like, you, that's not true, like this is my experience, it has nothing to do with development or hormones or that sort of stuff. So I don't want to invalidate anyone's experience, but now that I'm older, I look back on that and I think like how lucky I was to go through something like that, because we all suffer in different ways. It's all relative. There are horrible things happening in the world every day, you know. So I guess I would just say have the experience. There's so many experiences to have in this world, and sometimes we get one that is so traumatic, or that is so much fun, or that is so sad, or you turn around the next day and you see something that's so beautiful. Having experiences that are difficult is an experience. And I'm a huge fiend for quotes, and I saw this one, I think it was Mother Teresa, and she said, you know, the best way that I can show my gratitude is by enduring like even the greatest struggle with joy. And you don't need to be joyful about having a really bad day, but sometimes it helps to just take a deep breath, realize that you're still breathing, look up and say, this is an experience. And you never know what you're supposed to be learning from it or who you're supposed to meet, because you could be having the worst day and then you walk into a room like this and you meet someone who changes your life. You just don't know, and the universe unfolds in this magical way. But if I always think about the YouTube videos where they were talking to teenagers about like, don't give up. I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically like, it gets better. And it really is true. I think that once you have the ability to look around and see life for what it is, it's worth having the bad days. That was a really long answer to that question, but I think that it's an experience and it's meant to be lived. What would I change in the world? I would That's a really good question. I would want people to understand my gosh. I would change people's willingness to see each other. I would change people's ability to see each other. I think that I feel that there's so much effort to define power, to have power over other people. And it's not the point. For me, it's not the point for me. Oh my God, you are. You are. You just don't know that you love yourself yet.